Hello, welcome to another edition of the Studio City Aftershow. I'm James Lott Jr., host, and I have an amazing guest who are my favorite people in the whole wide world. Yes, the whole wide world. That's my favorite people. And he actually got a nomination for a Daytime Emmy. We're going to talk about that, what that feels like, about his role on the show and why he was so deserving of that nomination, and a bunch of other things that are going on in the world. We're going to talk about it all with him. I'm just so happy to have him with me, Scott Turner Schofield. Hi, Scott.
Hi, James. It's totally mutual. So,
mutual. I mean, you're my favorite. You really are my favorite people.
We need to talk more. We should.
We do. No, seriously, we do. No, seriously, we do. But whenever we do talk, it's always good. Whenever I see you, it's always good. So I want to start off with this because I was going to ask you a certain question, but I have to ask you another question before I ask you that question.
Okay.
So, as you can see, I'm black. Just in case you guys didn't know that at home.
Wait, what?
I know. Just this year. I'm black this year. But I know for me in the entertainment business, I have been referred to over the years as a black host or as a host. There's several things that go on with that. I'm a little older than you are. And I remember back in the day when a lot of us were trying to get our seat at the table, many of us were like trying to drop the black part. Like don't see the color part. Don't see it. We just want to get, there was not representation, of course. Then there are parts of my life where representation was political. So please refer to me as a black host. Meanwhile, inside, we see ourselves just as hosts. So I was going to ask you this question about the Emmy thing, but I feel like I should ask this first. How do you see yourself and would like to be, just in a magical world, seen as a trans actor or as an actor?
Well, the world that we live in, we can't escape. Okay. So, in a perfect world, I would have, like all of us would all be seen for who we are, and we would have ways of communicating to each other that we see each other and that we hold each other as we see each other, right? Some people used to say like, well, look, if everyone could just like see who you are, would you even need to be trans? And it's like, I don't know, actually.
That's a great
I can't know that. Like, let me just step outside of the human community.
That's a great question, though. Wow.
It is a good question. It's like, well, okay, yeah. Let's just like go into an alternate universe where people can really see into each other's souls, let's say, right? And it's why like we love each other. It's like, I feel like from the second that we met, it was just like, we see each other, we love each other.
I agree.
And there certainly are people who live their lives in a spiritual way who actually do that, right?
True.
Spiritual, not religious, right? It's like see people and love people for the higher selves of who they are that is unfettered by any of the physical characteristics of every life, right? But you still can't say, oh, I don't see color. Oh, I don't.
I hate that.
To me, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you can't do that because we live here on Earth. And we are humans, and we are having a really incredibly human experience. So I'm a human who is experiencing a transgender life right now. And that is actually special and cool too, by the way, right? And I'm sorry for the people who can't like get through their stuff enough to like be with me on how cool this is. Because I'm having a great life.
Okay.
As a person, right? So for all the hard stuff, like I get to transcend all of that, like constantly. Like I'm constantly having these steep lows and then having these like steep highs of being like, oh, I figured that out. I'm in evolution, right? Constantly, and that is something I think a lot of humans wish they had.
Well, also the fact that you get to actually act on occasion. That's kind of like. That is the great life you get to have, that you actually are doing something I know you love to act. I know you do. So that you actually get to do and play parts, and you are trans, but you're actually able to act where maybe 20 years ago, well, maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah. I'm playing with my mic. Hold on. Is this okay? Is this? I realized the mic was like on the table, and I should probably hold it.
We're home, kids. We're at home. This is real life.
So, I mean, the Emmy thing is amazing. And this is another example. I'm like, so I'm also the first trans man to get a Daytime Emmy, but I'm the first trans man to be nominated for any acting Emmy ever, primetime, daytime, period, right? Well, sure, like, yay, but like
I'm
also,
clapping for you. No, let me clarify that. I'm clapping for you as my friend who's an actor to get, because you should be. I'm gonna preach for a second. You should be able to celebrate that for yourself personally, professionally, and also have a political slant on it. But I feel like you should be able to celebrate that too. You earned it. You got it.
I'm celebrating that I'm nominated. Like that really, it's like the cliche is true. Like when I got nominated, I was like, that is such an honor, because what it means is all those nasty people who said that I was just a diversity hire. There was literally an article that was like, looking for trans actors, experience not necessary.
Dang.
And they utterly erased 15 years of an award-winning theater career that I had built for myself, as if I had just walked off the street and onto the set of Bold and Beautiful. Like I got lost on my way to The Price is Right. You know what I mean? Like, which shoots next door, which is why
It does, folks. It's right. I've been to the set.
Okay.
He didn't get lost. He got to the right place. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so like a group of my peers, and frankly, peers who are probably better than me, right? Like picked me to be in a group of people. Like that whole category, outstanding guest performer in a digital drama is like, and by the way, that's a non-gendered category. So I'm with all kinds of people in there, right? And right, so like that's a huge, huge honor, right? I feel, and that's saying like I'm an actor. Yeah, you think? It's only been decades. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, folks, if you don't know his story, he's been around for a while, folks. He's been out there stage.
Which is weird because I'm only 27, so. Child star.
It's not that. I love it. I just pulled the Black Don't Crack card on myself. I go, yes, I started in my late 40s, but I'm okay.
When women are like, how do you look so young? I'm like, you could just transition. I'll say that to Joe, Karen, Rowling. I guess you could just transition. It's great skincare.
Homegirl. I didn't read the Harry Potter books anyway, so that's all I got to say. That's my shade there.
I used to, it's a bummer because there was a magic to that. It was like, and it got kids reading again, like that. It did. Now I'm doing suicide prevention on teenagers who like came to reading through that book and who are trans and who now are wanting to die because of Joe, Karen, Rowling.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So can we, it kind of goes in the same vein. I guess we do have to really separate, or we can't really separate the artist from the art anymore at this point, because it is kind of detrimental to all of us if we don't. I feel that way.
Yeah, well, somebody said this, Paisley Grawl, who's a really excellent trans activist, said this really well on Facebook yesterday. When they're dead, it's one thing. Like when they're historical, like for instance, Netflix just separated out Gone with the Wind.
Yes,
right?
I heard about that, yes.
Right, which I think is good because like the racial stereotypes in that, and look, yeah, it was made decades and decades and decades ago when reality was even more racist, right? And so it's reflecting the even more racistness of the time, but without context, without saying, look, you got to watch this understanding that it was made by very racist people, like entirely, that there is some serious racism that had knock-on effects forever. And when you watch it like that, you can see it, you can point it out. Like we're not just saying it's normal anymore, right?
Yes.
Right. But
that was my argument. I love that.
Right. But like Joe Karen is like hurting us actively right now. Right. Like someone's dead. Their stuff is in the past. Like, yes. And we can look at it, we can contextualize it, and we can like decide whether it harms us or not. Right. Right. But like when someone's actively and can I just say this?
Say it. It's my show. Say whatever you want. Say whatever you want.
I'm someone who became a man, okay? So I've studied men. Joe Karen Rowling is offering unsolicited opinions at the wrong time. Then when pushed back against, doubling down about it, yelling about it, using like pseudoscience and conspiracy theory. So yeah, she's definitely broken gender. She's a man now. She's a white.
How it's fun. Where's my bell?
like I'm over
Wow,
it.
that's profound. I never even thought it that way. That's profound, actually.
Those are men that I don't want to be like. She's a man that I don't want to be like. Good job, JK. Joe Karen.
I have just been blown away. Okay, I like that. I like that. That's a great perspective. I like that's a great perspective. I love that.
So and I'm not even, one thing I really want to say is like I'm an artist, right? Cancel culture is really messed up from an artist. And I'm an artist. I've been censored twice in my career because I'm trans by cis people. Like my show was called off or threatened to be called off in 2 different situations, right? I was required to censor myself in one of them, right? Right. Okay, because I'm trans. So I actually know what it's like to be censored. Like, and it's like one of the most profound betrayals because you're like, will somebody call the cops? But nobody even wants to protect me. Isn't that interesting? Parallel, right? Okay. So like
that's
that. So I'm very much against cancel culture.
Yeah.
And as a trans person who's experienced the gaslighting of transphobia throughout my entire life, and this is something I love that you talk about, the gaslighting of race, right? It gets the same muscle that gets used,
Oh, it does. Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Not the same thing, but it's the same muscle that gets used,
completely.
right? You know, I'm here to tell people, like, you don't have to hang out with that. It's not cancel culture to not hang out with it, right?
I agree.
You know?
I agree.
And yeah, so.
Yeah, I know. No, that's no, you just said some things that are really profound. But I just took some notes. I did. No, because it's just one of those things, and you know, I was telling somebody in a group the other day, I said, you know, I'm a host, I'm a producer, I'm a content creator. That's where I'm at the core of who I am. I'm a creative. You're a creative. We're creatives. So I have things I want to talk about. There's things I want to get out. I was on TikTok, that wonderful, wonderful app that everybody's on, everybody loves.
Doing news on TikTok?
So I'm on TikTok. And I'm actually a star on TikTok for some weird reason. I don't know why, but
you are your star in life.
Oh, well, thank you. I like that. So, but I have a series on there called A Lot of Spoken Word. I use my last name with 2 T's, A Lot of Spoken Word. So my spoken words are anything. I've talked about what, but in recent weeks, they've got a little more political. Everything's under a minute, folks. You know, on TikTok, everything's under a minute. So I write these original pieces for TikTok to read. And most people love them. They love my voice, of course. Oh, your voice, blah, blah. Well, a couple of my serious spoken word pieces about being Black or being queer or whatever it is, I have people tell me, this is TikTok. We're here to escape.
Oh, okay. Good luck with that.
Right. But my thing kind of is, well, then don't watch it. Don't listen to me. If do you want to escape, you can actually follow certain people and get to escape. But again, they're trying to tell me not, get back to what you're doing before, the silly songs you're doing before. It's like, I told somebody, I'll get back to those at some point, of course, but these are all coming from my heart. Everything I do every day is from my heart. So my heart is saying right now, I got things to say. And in under a minute, I'm going to say them. And my page is not a democracy, it's dictatorship. So whatever I say on my page is on my page. It's not up for, everybody to vote on. I heard that. I mean, it's just funny how it's permeating the gaslighting, hush-up culture. Shh.
Censorship.
Shh.
Right?
Sit down, be quiet, just behave. It's not the right time to talk about this or say this. It's just getting so big right now. It's like, you guys are all uncomfortable, aren't you? You are all uncomfortable.
And I'm willing to bet that this is like people with some mainstream identity that they don't want to feel troubled, right? Because just as trans issues are Black issues, right? Our queer issues, our Christian issues, are, right? All of the things, right? You turn it right around and there's somebody who doesn't want you to trouble their supremacy. Anytime you're saying my thing is more, my whatever identity is more important than yours, and it's a mainstream identity, that's supremacy, friend. It's like the dictionary.
I always say, I hate the pain Olympics. That's my favorite thing I hate. My pain is worse than yours. Well, my pain is worse than yours. No, my pain, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's all bad. It's all pain. And we're Americans. Come on, we need to be looking out for each other.
And you know, I have to be very careful because I'm a white person, right? And so like there's a lot that I don't even know that I don't know,
Okay, I get it. I get that. Okay.
right? And like my job is to like when someone presents me with that to be like, oh, okay, rather than no, I'm not, right? Like, which is when I say no, I'm not, when I push back against someone giving me information, that's me supremacist, right? I'm saying I'm not. I'm more important here than what learning you're giving me. So I can't do that, right? So it's like I've got to just like be very careful when I make comparisons, right, around anybody's issues because they're different, right? It's just different. First of all, they don't have the same history,
Right.
right? Like, yeah, trans people have actually existed across all time in every culture, and we've been erased throughout history. But that's not the same as being enslaved throughout history. Both are bad things.
Both are bad. Both are bad.
In any way. Do you
Yeah.
know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes. Right.
So, right. And yeah, like which is worse? Like it's not like who cares? It's both terrible, right? But I like this idea of like muscle reflex because I think there's a lot of this that is muscle reflex within us. When you're raised a certain way, like when you're raised white, you build this muscle as to like how you move through the world as a white person and what you accept and what you don't. And so when people come back at you, you go, no, that's not. And that's a muscle reflex of racism. And I experience the same muscle reflex when someone tells me to sit down and shut up because I'm talking too much and expecting too much for being trans. I see it. It's the same like, no, shut up. You know what I mean? No, you're ridiculous. Right? That you know, and it comes with different slurs, right? But I think there's like this muscle memory, and because we're human beings, right? We're humans, we're like meat bags. So like there's a certain level for as like spiritual and smart and whatever we can be, like we're still muscles that,
Sure.
right?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went out before the Rona happened. I went on a date with someone who considered themselves non-binary, and that was my first time. Now, I always equate this to, I tell this story because I always tell people out there when they go, what should I do? How do I talk to Black people? I'm like, so what James Lott Jr. did is a thing called the internet. It's really interesting. And also, I have friends that I can go to who also identify them. It's like, go out there and do it. Do the research. So I wanted to talk to this person a certain way. I wanted to use the right pronouns, the right kind of slang terms that I may use, but I may see when I see gender. I may slip into certain things. The great thing about this person was that they allowed me to slip up a couple of times and didn't, scream and holler. But I showed that person that I really did my research. So I think that's kind of why I tell people who are not trans, who are cis, who are not Black, who are white, like there you can do there's a lot of resources out there. It's just, we don't live in a vacuum. I know I could call you if I had to, if I had some questions about things. I mean, it's just kind of like, I liked this person. I wanted to make sure that that person felt comfortable and that I was okay and I was being respectful. I'm like, that's kind of the basics of everything, right, folks? Like just kind of,
Well, and you can tell. I assume that the reason why this person gave you a little bit of wiggle room, right, was because they could tell that you had done the work, and that like, yeah, like some things are unfamiliar to people who aren't living that life, right?
Yes.
I can't know what it's like to be Black, right? I can read everything I possibly can. I can be open and receptive and accepting in conversations when people tell me what their reality is. And that helps me show up as someone who, like, you can feel is doing the work. You can't be perfect. And by the way, perfect is a white supremacist concept. So, it's not perfect,
No.
right? But yeah, people can tell when you're doing the work. And that's our job right now, my job as a white person is to like shut up with my thoughts about it all and listen and allow that, because we can say that like, oh, I know, right? But when you actually do the thing, you learn like nuances and you become expert at it. And I want to be an expert white ally, like, right? Like, so I got to shut up and listen right now.
Well, it's funny. We had this talk on my show years ago. Folks don't know this. I ran a place in San Francisco that was male only workers. And I hired back then what they called F to M, female to male transsexual. That was about to turn back. We're talking like the late 90s. It was back. I was ahead of my time apparently because I was like, but the thing for me, I guess it was just a no-brainer when he applied for the job. He looked like a man to me, possessed the qualities of a man, and to me it was a no-brainer to hire him. And we're still friends to this day. But it was like, for me, people were like, well, Jay, are you sure? I'm like, well, I kept saying, like, what are you seeing that's different? I knew, they could tell me kind of what they thought, but I was just kind of like, for me, I don't see a difference. I'm like, he's a man. I'm like, is it a male thing? Like, he fits the job. He was a great worker, did a great job, and apparently I was like groundbreaking at the time, whatever. But I was just like, for me, it was really base level. I understand it completely. I know it completely. But if you're a male presenting to me, then you're a man. That's all that counts to me. And if you're talented, that's why I want to lead into the acting part. And if you're talented, then it shouldn't matter either. So you're presenting as a man, you're talented at the job, then to my brain goes, you should get hired. I don't know about you, but that's kind of, maybe it's a crazy notion, but I shouldn't think about all the other things my brain is kind of going towards. It should be, no, here's the two things that are major. This person's talented and they're a man. So as an actor, do you get that all? Do you have to fight that, I guess? It's still to this day that it's, yeah.
People, like, when I go into a room, people are literally, like, before they listen to my monologue, when I go into an audition, they're thinking, does he, like, could I see him kissing a man or a woman? Like, if it's a gay role, like, would I believe it, or would that look straight? Or if it's a straight role, would I believe it, or would that look lesbian? Right? And I haven't even opened my mouth yet, and I've got, like,
wow.
In addition to, I remember a casting director once said, you really can't take casting personally, because you might one day wear a cologne that reminds a casting director of, like, her ex-boyfriend. And they like, that's really true, because it's humans, right? So you go in against that, everyone goes in against that, and then I get all these other things, right? So yeah, it's before my skills have even been considered. And that's why being able to put, like, Emmy nominated in front of my name. And how funny is it that I have to get considered for one of television's highest honors to be on equal footing with any random cisgender guy?
Right. Isn't that crazy? Seriously, isn't that crazy? But right now, we have to do that on some level. It's a marketing thing. You have to market. You're a business. You are a business in this industry. So you got to find what you can to market. I have letters after my name. There are times I have to accentuate those letters after my name. I don't give a fuck about them. But I have to, so that people go, oh, James is smart.
Right.
He is articulate. The things they say to black people. Oh, so I guess we could use him. But I'm like, if I didn't have these letters and I was white, it probably wouldn't matter.
Right.
So you have to do the same thing. You have to market yourself. You are a business. You're in the business of acting and performing and producing. You got to do what you can.
Yeah, and speaking of which, like, I'm making a reel right now, and it's like I'm looking at it, and when people say, like, oh, but don't you want to break out and not play trans roles? And all of the material I have is me doing work about being trans, like the stories that I get hired to tell. Thankfully, because just 5 years ago, right, they weren't hiring us to even do our own work, right?
Oh.
So I've got this reel full of, like, charming, beautiful, well-acted ways of talking about being trans, right? Like,
right, yeah.
When are you going to let me? When are you going to change your view? And that's, again, why I go back to saying, like, my job right now, if I want to change racism on, like, a global level, I have to change myself. And I have to sit here and listen and let it all flow in and, like, do the work. You know what I mean? And if people want to change how the world is around gender, same difference. You got to start listening to people who have this, rather than doing the gaslighting of saying, oh, well, I know what you're saying, but you sound so angry. Or, well, I see where you're coming from, but I disagree.
Yes.
I don't know if I can believe, you know what I mean? It's like, right, because you're putting your supremacy, your cis supremacy in front of it, and you're not actually listening to what could change everything for you and the world. If you change, the world changes. That's how that works. 1 + 1.
I forgot. I'm blanking on her name right now, but General Hospital added a trans character.
That's right.
And then didn't do much with her. I mean, like, seriously, you know the soaps. You're going to soaps. I mean, don't be started on your stuff on Bold and Beautiful, how that whole storyline got dropped. Shout out to Carla Mosley, I love her to death. But no, I mean, I feel like they brought on this beautiful trans woman to play a doctor, friend to one of the major stars of the show, and then literally, and they also were leading towards something with one of the little kids, and they kind of dropped that too. And it's just like, I mean, it's soaps. I mean, I think a lot of soap watchers watch this show and watch my work. I just want people to just know that a lot of times things do not go through because of what they perceive the Midwest, Middle America audience will not accept. We got to change that, don't we, Scott? We got to change that.
Well, but unfortunately, it's hard. This is the thing. I've been working for a really long time, and the true fact is, once again, you kind of can't change the world. Like, I can make material. You and I both can make material and content, thoughtful. We can help people. We can be like, look at this, but they still have, you can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't make it true, right? Like they can do it. And so, I appreciate when Bold and Beautiful did the trans storyline. First of all, they did it really right. They listened to trans people and they did it really right and well. And they were rewarded. They won an Emmy for that storyline, right? They were rewarded.
Yes.
So much
I know. But it's like, but basically it's about the soap thing and we can't really change. But Bold and Beautiful did it kind of correctly in the beginning. They really did, step by step.
And then they were like, we don't know. And they didn't, I was pitching storylines. I was like, we can take this really deep. We can go to really interesting places that will link up to universal themes that you're exploring, and the writers were very much on my side and listened to me, but they couldn't get it through. It wasn't in the idea of the person who, moved on to other things. And that's the prerogative. That's fine. You know what I mean? And you know what? It's all okay, because in the first place, like, just to think about the fact that 33 million viewers globally got to watch that storyline, and it did, there is a certain step-by-step to things, right? Like, you can't just have it be like a full thing, right? With that audience, that's true. But they got that first step, and then there will be another step, and there will be another step. And it's annoying that it doesn't go as quickly as we want it to, and it sucks because people literally die and families are torn apart. And there's really serious stuff that media has the power to actually intervene within, and media is made by humans.
Yep. That's a good point. And you're right. I mean, like I said, there are many times in my life where I was the first black blank, the first this in the company, and literally just me being there was the political statement. Well, it was the way in. And you're right. And I was the only one for years, and all of a sudden someone else comes through and breaks. I mean, you're right. You're right about that. That's true. Sometimes it just takes, the first step is still good. It's still a good step, I guess. It's still a good step.
Yeah. It's like meditation, right? Like there's no wasted time. You know what I mean? It's all good. And it's just like, should I meditate every day? Yes, I absolutely should. But given the fact that I only meditate every few days, I'm still making progress.
Yeah. I say small steps lead to large rewards. So it's fine. It works.
Right.
A step is a step is a step is a step.
And like you and I were discussing before we recorded this, time seems to be moving faster. Things seem to be changing very rapidly, but also deeply, not superficially right now.
Yeah.
And good, here we are. So none of that time was wasted. None of those lives were lost in vain. Yeah.
So speaking of our friends, Sean and Michelle Kanan, who created this show, Studio City, which I'm doing right now, they have a show for, how did they come to you and say, we're writing a role for you? Or did you just, because I know you're friends with them, I mean, how did this come about? I don't even know how this came about.
So Sean and I met on Bold and Beautiful, and he was the sweetest guy. And I was kind of when you meet people and you're like, I don't know why you're so great.
He is. He's really great.
Right? And it's funny how, again, human, we're how could you be so great?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Everybody's great. Right?
Yeah.
But there were a few years where we didn't interact, and then he put together this wonderful book called Success Factor X, and he asked me to be in it, and I was like, huh? Like it just sort of seemed so like funny, like why me, this, huh? And I mean, yeah, I know I'm a successful person and I've had I have a real story about it,
Yeah.
but also what, you know what I mean? And then I find out, like Sean has some real, like, for lack of a better phrase, like skin in the game on this. Sean cares about LGBTQ people because Sean cares about LGBTQ people in his life, and Michelle with him, right? And so when they call me about the show, at first it wasn't supposed to be a trans role. They want me to move into what they see as equal footing in the world and just have a role, right? And there's a lot of power to this story that actually, and again, this is where I say like our stories are so connected, right? That like my trans story can really shine a light on the universal themes of whatever story you're putting together. You know what I mean? And so once we kind of thought that through, it was like, you know what, let's do this because you got to take it again, step by step. Like, let's do this and let's have that impact. And then let's move to the next thing. And Michelle's already working on another project that she wants me to do. And she wants me to play a bad guy, a bad cis guy. And I'm like, yes, girl.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll kill it. You'll kill it. Yes.
And look, I got to tell the story, and the reason why it's so good is because I got to bring all of that authenticity. I got to do something that got to take a step that hadn't been taken yet, that made people pay attention. And next, we'll see what comes, right? Like,
it was very real. It was very real. I mean, I know you were acting. I know you're an actor, but it just felt very authentic. It did feel authentic. It came across when you watch the show. You guys will see it. Some of you have watched it already, of course. If you haven't watched it, you do come across very authentic. It's just like, wow, the writing was good, the acting was good. I mean, it was an amalgamation of all kinds of things that came together.
It was because they listened, right? So Michelle was like, how can we do this in a way that does it right? And, my day job is consulting with television and film on how to do trans storylines right. So I was like, okay, let me tell you, right? Right? Yeah. She listened, and here, like, everybody be mindful. A cisgender woman listened to a transgender man. The whole cisgender team allowed my minority perspective to influence how they made their thing, and they are nominated for an Emmy because of it.
To me, it's like, look how that working together, how that can actually work together, like
for the betterment of all.
Right.
Tide raises all ships, like, like.
Seriously, I think it's just a great example of the village working together as a village to create something to better the village.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that, I guess it's hard, but it's not that hard. I see it as not that hard, but I guess for some people, it really is that hard.
Well, yeah, we're not taught to listen to people very well.
That's true, right? Too. That's true.
Collaboration is an art and a skill, and not everybody has it.
You're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely. I asked a question once on one of my shows to people out there who were watching, and said, "Are you a good listener?" And some people are like, "What do you mean?" I mean, are you a good listener? Like, I'm asking you right now, are you a good listener? Like, are you listening to what I'm saying? And I said, and listening's not just with your ears. A lot of folks don't know that. They really don't. They don't know that. I mean, I know I've had some training, and that's why I kind of know it. But not at the base level, folks, you're right. Folks do not know that listening just isn't hearing the words out of somebody's mouth and repeating them back to them. It's just like, it's much more than that. Are you watching my body language? Are you watching my emotions? Are you feeling stuff? They're like, no. It's like, a lot of people are like, no, I'm not a good listener. They don't get it.
And, when I think about people who are real problems right now, like mostly white men, white cisgender heterosexual men, right? Like, these are the people who say, like, I can't have privilege because, I grew up poor or whatever. Like, yeah, right? Like, and what I'm seeing is these folks feel profoundly unlistened to, right? Trump voters, let's just shorthand it, right? Yes. Right? Like, they haven't been listened to, and they haven't been taught to listen to. And that's like on a really deep level that they haven't been listened to. And that's why they're so angry. And we can go to the other side of the spectrum and we can say Black Lives Matter. Like, the fact that like a phrase like Black Lives Matter has to be argued shows a profound non-listening, right, on the part of the world, right? And that's why people are so angry, right? So yeah, I think being a good listener is one of the most profound things that you can do, and it makes a better world. So do it.
I agree. I think, one of the things I think about, I've talked to friends of mine who are straight, gay, and everything in between about trans. And I feel like what I'm getting takeaways from is, well, that's not part of my movement. Or that's not part of my movement. That's not part of my movement. There's something else. There is somebody else. There's something else. Why do you think it's always so, is it because of the, how can I say this? Because they're thinking of the parts. That's that why it seems like it's so separated from certain all the movements.
Look, it's at our peril that we don't recognize, that we're all connected. And I'm sorry, but like trans issues are not a white people issue. Trans issues are an all people issue, and Black trans women make up 94% of the people who are murdered. And that's usually about 2 or 3 people a month in the United States that nobody pays attention to. Okay. Right. And like literally when I show on my slide presentation, the pictures, it's all Black feminine people. Right. And that's because of the magnification of injustice, right? It's racism, it's misogyny, right? The hatred of things that are feminine, yes. Right? There's homophobia because and Joe Karen Rowling is out there saying this to millions of people that transgender women aren't women, that they're men. And so if they're men and they're effeminate, then what does that make them? There's your homophobia, right? Like, right. So, and it's transphobia. It's all like, and it's magnifying targets on people's backs. And I'm like, the place that I come from on this is like, one for all and all for one. Yes, as a white trans man, my issues are different, but when you're coming after me, you're coming after all of us. And when you're coming after any of us, you're coming after me. And I am here for that. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. I'm the same way. I fight for everybody. I support everybody. And I tell people all the time, I also have people come at me sometimes and say, well, James, what do you do? And I'm like, well, every day, all year long, for years, I showcase people from all walks of life on my shows. And they Google me, you'll see my track record. You and I have been on shows together. I seriously am always out there advocating for everyone to be spotlighted. To me, that's my job. My job is to do that. And it doesn't matter what your background is, what your gender is, I've always, and I will continue to do that on a regular basis. And that's what I advocate for, Scott, is that instead of making this like this big kind of thing happening now, and then all of a sudden I'll sprinkle some people in here and there, make it just part of your life. Whatever it is you're doing, make it part of your life. When you're making decisions, don't stay in the box of, I'm going after the same 5 type of people. Just like open it up. And so if you do happen upon a trans person or a Black queer person or a non-binary person, and if they're good for the job, they're good for the job. Like, for me, it's so, I know it's not that simplistic, but it is that simplistic to me. It's both.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at a basic level it is. And then you have to make sure, I did some consulting for a company who really wanted to be a trans-friendly place, but the culture was not. And it was not safe for that company to like go to a job fair and try to bring trans people in. Do you know what I mean? And like excite these people like they're getting a job, like a wonderful job at a wonderful company, and then they get there and it's trash. It's a dumpster fire of bigotry in there. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's the thing about like being colorblind or not seeing gender. Like we actually, if you don't see color or see gender, then you're not paying attention to the specific needs that we need to be sensitive to, right? But I hear where you're coming from. And see, that's the thing. Like, I'm not talking about you because on your show, what I was most impressed when we first met, when you first brought me on your show like 5 years ago.
I know. It's crazy.
Right? Weird because I'm only 27. Right? Yes. Right? You had done so much work. And I was like, I know you're queer, but like that doesn't necessarily mean that you're trans competent. Right. Do you know what I mean? You don't just tokenize and just like, oh, I just put a little mishmash of everybody on my show. Like you went deep into like why this would matter, why this would be a thing, asking me questions that allowed me to educate your audience, like really generously giving me a rich platform to work from, right? Thank you. I can't tell you how many times I've been interviewed by people who like aggress me, and not even microaggressions, like full on aggress me on the air. You know what I mean? So, right, because they want a transgender, which by the way is not the way you say it, to be tokenized on their show. You know what I mean? So,
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
so I just want to bring it out for our listeners. That's, you do it right, and that's why you're sort of, because you've been doing it for so long, you shorthand and say like you feel right for the job. But there is, like, we do have to see those things.
We have to see it. Oh, we do, and I agree with that. So, in your work you're doing, I mean, how are we doing with trans stuff in media these days? I mean, in television, stage, movies. I mean, how is it moving along? I mean, but being this whole thing is happening now. I mean, how's it look?
Yeah. At the Daytime Emmys, there's me and Rowan Amon, who is a Black trans woman who is also, she's up for Best Actress, Best Leading Actress in a digital drama for the amazing series King Esther, which I really need to go right out and look at.
Yes, share it, folks. Yes.
Right. Also in that series is a fantastic woman named Dana Didi. And she and I have known each other for a very long time also, and I just love everything she does. So go check her out. Like, yeah, things are moving along, right? When people say like, oh, how does it feel to have this nomination, and be the first trans man, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, obviously it's great for me, but it's like, finally the light is getting shone. And it's like, sure, like, hi everybody, I'm in my spotlight, but let's turn that around, because there are like dozens of transgender men who are doing really cool work that deserve your attention. And if I can, be the mirror reflecting that light off into the rest of my community, that means that people are like paying attention and actually are invested in making the change. The fact that I got nominated means that people who are not trans voted for me. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so change is happening. It's just frustrating. It's part of why I'm so frustrated about Jo Karen Rowling, right? Because she's using media to harm a vulnerable and already hurting group of people during like the worst time in human history, like for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, what is wrong with you, lady? Honestly, what is your deficiency?
I don't get it either. I get it, but I don't get it. I mean, it's her privilege just shining through and through. And
but other somebody was just telling me, I didn't see it, but another actor like brought up a whole thing about Caitlyn Jenner, like took a joke that he made like years ago. I wish I could call him out by name, and put it out there again. Like, why now? Why ever? Why now? Why again?
yeah,
why are you such a problem?
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it's a trip, and I don't have rose-colored glasses on it by no means at all. But I'm always hopeful and always hoping that the landscape will change, because we are seeing more and more people in positions of power actually start to look at it and say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this now. We're going to let that go. We're going to do this. We're going to green light that. Folks are taking it in their own hands. They got phones. They got cameras. They got ring lights. They're working it out, getting their friends together. Pose, of course, was a big thing for me, because I'm from that time period, unfortunately. I'm from that time period. And seeing Billy Porter win, the first openly gay Black man to win Best Actor in a drama series. Not guest, not this, not that, but Best Actor in a drama series. I thought, but then I looked at the sea of people out there who are cheering him on and going, there's MJ Rodriguez. Like, all these trans women who are doing great work on the show too, why aren't they nominated? Like, to me, I'm going to say this, MJ should have been nominated hands down, but don't get me started on that. For the incredible work that she's doing on that show. She's the heart of that show. I mean, just don't even get me started. But the fact that
she's good in everything she does, PS.
Right.
Like,
she can sing, she can everything.
Yeah. She had like a 2-episode arc on Nurse Jackie.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Like, we were just watching like old stuff because we were bored now. And I was like, that's MJ Rodriguez. You know what I mean? Like, and she was like, beatific.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right. So I almost like you just saying now, that's how I felt when I saw him talking to his cast and they're cheering him on. And I was going, but there's all these actors, they're great too. And why aren't they getting nominated? So maybe it'll happen. So my little heart goes, well, maybe next time it will happen. Maybe the door is opening, and then next season they'll write some beautiful scenes and it'll shine, and the peers will go, it's her turn. It's her turn. It's her turn. Yeah. Like I'll never forget back in the day when Crying Game came out, and that whole thing. And,
Mhm.
and Jay Davidson, kind of the whole thing with that, and then get nominated for an Oscar. It was like you just gave the secret away, and it was just all mishandled. To me, it was all mishandled. It was just even I didn't even know what was going on. I was like 21, 20. I was like, this all feels mishandled. Like I didn't understand what was going on.
Poison tree.
Yes, yes.
That whole movie was a mishandling of humanity.
Oh, completely. I'm like, oh, but again, that's 20 some years ago, and now we've obviously have come farther than that, thank God. But it's just funny to see how the world. I just keep hoping it gets better and better. Your nomination is a part of that. I'm so proud of you, my friend. I could talk to you 1,000 hours, but they won't let me do that. But I love you more than anything. So
well, I hope you know the same. I hope you know that I love you, and I'm grateful to be in this moment with you. For as hard as it is, like to have friends like you, to be able to just like talk like this about it, and to also be like actually making change and like doing what we do together. I really am grateful for that. So thank you.
Me too. Now I want to say as we end it, are you working on anything? I mean, I know we're in the Rona, but are you working on some stuff and anything you can kind of mention that you're working on?
Sure, thank you. So I have this one-man show, Becoming a Man in 127 Easy Steps. It was a one-man show that I premiered in 2007.
Yeah, I remember you did. Yes.
I feel like I've been living 10 years ahead of everything for a really long time.
Yeah, you were. You have been. Yeah.
And we are. So we turned it into a movie. It's also a book and it's also a podcast. And the movie, part of it, I say because we had Corona issues, part of it premiered at Tribeca this year. And so we're using that. We're taking it around. We're working on getting the full thing shown and bought and put out into the world. So if I could have everybody's like thoughts and prayers on that, I really appreciate it.
You got mine. So you actually did a whole thing, a book. That's so smart. That's something I would do. I'd love that. That's so smart.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. So in the live show, the audiences would call out between 1 and 127. They call out numbers because there's 127 different stories because being a man is kind of like a thing, right? Right? Like,
yes.
And honestly, too, it's like, look, actually, if I have 127 stories, like everybody does, and it's like it's a celebration of like every life. Do you know what I mean? So, so there's 127 stories. You would get a different show every night, but you can't do that with a movie. So, and we didn't have funds to film 127 all of the pieces. Yeah. So we're like, okay, we're going to film the pieces that really need to be filmed. Then we're going to have the stuff that you can read in a book, right? The stuff that's really great to read, put that in a book. And the stuff that you really want to listen to, but you don't necessarily need to hear or read is going to be in a podcast.
Wait a minute. So you had to sit down. I'm like, let me get this straight. How funny I said that.
What?
Why'd I say that? I came out nowhere. Ding ding. No, but so you have 127 stories, but then you had to go through each of them and figure out which ones go here, which ones go here, which ones go here.
I mean, that was pretty clear, actually.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah, that was like, okay. I mean, there were ones that I really wished, like some of the texts are, and even some of the texts are screenplay, right, that we get to do. There's, so there's like a whole piece about like hooking up on Grindr that like we just couldn't afford. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, hooking up on Grindr in Paris. So like,
okay.
And so, right, but so we chose that, we put that as literature because we're like, okay, we would have preferred that you see this, but like it's still important to read.
Makes sense.
And then there are other pieces where it's like, yeah, it was just like, there's no way we could do this. It would be great if we could, but we can't. And so much of movies it's just stories that are adapted for the screen. So yeah, it's all right there. And I think it's fun because, in my dream, what will happen is we'll have this feature film, we'll have this limited series podcast, and we'll have this book. They will all be distributed by, I mean, in my dreams, it's like, Netflix or Hulu, Spotify, and a real publisher, you know what I mean? Simon & Schuster, right? Let's just call it out into the universe.
Hey,
right?
Say it, right? Scott, say it.
And then someone who loves to read buys the book and they're like, wait, there's more stories. And then they go watch the movie and they listen to the podcast. Someone who loves a podcast stumbles upon it and is like, this is great. Wait, there's a movie? Right? And then people see this sort of crown jewel of it, which is the movie. and they're like, you know what I mean? So again, living 10 years ahead of my time, like I don't know too many other big projects that have happened like that. So
actually, I'm trying to think, not me either. I have one friend who, B. Beeman, he's a musician, where he did a political album. They turned each track into a podcast episode.
oh, cool. Yeah.
That's only a piece. He didn't do a movie too and a TV show. Like he just did those two things. So I think you're the only person I know of I can just think of that's doing the. I call it blanketing. You're hitting all the marks, and I'm all about that. I'm all about blanketing. So
content, and it's marketing. There's a lot of ways that you can engage this story, and it's not just one thing. Which for a trans story to not just be one thing and to be speaking in its authentic voice, it's all part of it.
I love it. You're speaking my language. You're speaking my language. I love it. I do. I love it. Tell folks where they can find you on the interwebs.
Just look me up, Scott Turner Schofield. At Turner Schofield is where I am mostly. My consulting company, if you're interested just in what my trans activism work is Speaking of Transgender, and we're kind of all over on all the social medias too. So follow along. It'll be fun.
Yes. And I am James Lott Jr. You can follow me everywhere. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Everywhere at James Lott Jr. I made it very simple for you guys. YouTube is JLJ Media. This show is on every streaming platform you can think of. I want to thank Sean Kane and Michelle Kane for actually helping create this show, with Timothy Woodward Jr., who did all the directing. And this actually podcast is on JLJ Media. It's on all the streaming services. And we have other episodes coming up with Patricia Darbo and Sarah Joy Brown and Tristan Rogers. I'm talking to all of them. So these are all my buddies.
Great. Everybody's so good on that show.
They are. They're all. Everybody's good. I just like Carolyn Henry
was robbed. P.S.
I agree. I was like, wait a minute. One of the greatest actresses of like daytime and period didn't get nominated for this incredible role. Everybody else got nominated around her, and she's
like the glue of that series.
Too. I know.
Yeah.
That's that story, of course.
The world is imperfect.
Yes. Well, her work will stand. That'll stand the test of time. And I guess that's the real revenge, is that she did another good job in another role that she's just good at again. She's amazing.
And she's so good.
She is. She's so good. So everyone, please be safe out there. Do your research, do your education, talk to each other, not yell at each other, talk to each other, and we'll see you next time.